Okay, good evening. Welcome back. We have previously been in private session. We've previously approved the agenda as well. I just want to remind everybody that there are cameras in the room, and we are live streaming again. So there are cameras on either side there and there. There are cameras at the back as well, and they do have, some of them anyway, have Zoom capability as well. For attendance, we have everyone in the room, with the exception of Trustee Hatfield, who is on the phone. As I said, we've previously approved the agenda with L4 removed. And so notice of motion from Trustee Halberstadt will now become L4, and notice of motion Trustee Higgison will now become L5. I have a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on land surrounded by water, originally inhabited by Indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenni Lenape, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi, as well as Huron-Wendat peoples. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We do have two special orders of the day. Director Kelly?
I ask that you please stand while I read these orders. A tribute to Shelley Harding Smith. Shelley Harding Smith was a Greater Essex County District School Board trustee for 10 years between the year 2000 and 2014. She always worked hard as a representative of her community to support children in our schools. She was tough, determined, and passionate. An electrician by trade, Shelley challenged and defied stereotypes. She never shrank from an issue because she thought it might be too controversial or unpopular if she believed an equitable outcome was possible. As a trustee, Shelley was a strong advocate for academic excellence, apprenticeship programs, diversity, equity, and inclusion. She was instrumental in developing the board's African Canadian Roads to Freedom curriculum document. She was proud of her heritage. Shelley received the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Award in 2012 for her service to her community. Her legacy is the many young people in our community who benefit from her courageous advocacy and her unwavering support. Please join me in a moment of silence. A tribute to Layla Gerard. Layla was a student at Bellwood Public School who passed away on October 7th, 2019, after a courageous battle against cancer. I can do this. Nothing is impossible. I can learn from my mistakes. Believing in myself. These are the few of the affirmations that Layla wrote as she started grade 6 last year. Layla was quiet, but everybody knew her as a wonderful person with a kind heart and a beautiful smile. It was a smile that greeted many through Bellwood's doors. She liked being a helper, and in that position she was able to have an impact on everyone in the school. She was very compassionate to the feelings of others, and she had the best laugh, a laugh that was contagious. She was a pleasure to teach and watch grow. When she left to get treatment, she was still a huge presence in her class. While she was not learning with them, the experience of missing her taught her fellow students so much. They knew they must be kind to everyone, and it was her absence that reminded them how important it is to take care of each other. That became Layla's class motto. At Bellwood Public School, Leda was a student, a classmate, a best friend, and a sister. She will be sorely missed. Please join me in a moment of silence. Please be seated.
Thank you. I did not have the opportunity to work with Trustee Harding-Smith myself, but I certainly know her reputation for strong advocacy and that her loss will be felt by the entire community. Thank you for that. Any declarations of conflict of interest? Trustee Olmsted.
I would like to declare a conflict for agenda item F1 for actions of the board. In the private session, I understand this has to do with negotiations, and as my husband is a member of OSSTF, an employee of the board, pursuant to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, I'm going to declare a conflict of interest as it is pecuniary in nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Olmsted. We do have one action of the board meeting private session, and I will pass it over to Vice Chair Burgess.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As stated, we have one item, F1. It's a matter of negotiations. There won't be any discussion here, but I would look for a motion to adopt that resolution. Trustee Leclerc, supported by Trustee Cook. No discussion. All those in favor of adoption of F1? Any opposed? And that's carried, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I have a mover to approve the minutes of September 17th? Trustee Higgison, seconded by Trustee Cheen. Any comments, questions, clarifications? Seeing none, all those in support of the minutes as presented? Any opposed? Seeing none, and that carries. Trustee Hatfield, would you like me to call on you separately, or would you prefer just to speak up?
I'll just speak out if I need to. But
Okay,
otherwise, you can assume that I'm voting in support.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Hatfield.
Okay.
For business rising from the minutes, I do have a few things. We passed a single-use plastics committee and some other things at the last board meeting. And in consultation with administration, and given that the motion did include trustee participation on the committee, we think that 2 trustees would be sufficient. And can I have a couple of volunteers, please? Trustee Halberstadt? Trustee Olmsted? Okay, anyone else? Trustee Sipcar, is this a committee that you plan on participating in? Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so we will appoint Trustees Halberstadt and Olmsted to the Single-Use Plastics Committee. Thank you for volunteering. I had also said that I would send out an email with regard to trustee school tours, which I did. I just had one response that indicated a specific request, and that was mine, which was for breakfast programs. So we will, unless there is are any concerns, comments, okay, I think administration will schedule some breakfast program tours, which I'm very much looking forward to. Thank you. And the last one, dates did go out, proposed dates, potential dates for the Community Action Committee. Not everyone responded to those emails, and even among those who, or those dates, and even among those that had responded, there wasn't a lot of commonality being found in terms of availability. And so we will send out a second round. Any further business arising from the minutes? That's all I had. Trustee Halberstadt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I had brought up, and it's in the minutes, that I requested that trustee photos be added to the back of the board calendar, the annual board calendar. I'm actually, I think I did mention that more important would be the name and the contact numbers of the trustees. I can put the pictures in there if you want to, but I think that was it was to give people the phone numbers of trustees they might want to reach.
Yep, we can certainly do that when the calendars come out next year. Thank you. Any more business arising from the minutes? Anything further? Okay, seeing none, I will move on. And we are at I, presentations. We're at the I1, the student trustee presentation. I believe that student trustee Jane is going to go first with the report.
This month, Nabil and I rolled out our elementary school outreach initiative. With Director Kelly's support, we are offering to do presentations at elementary schools throughout the year. We contacted principals to let them know we are available to speak to students in grades 6 to 8 to explain our role as student trustees and to inspire student engagement and leadership in their schools. This initiative was sent out, or this invitation was sent out last Thursday, and I am happy to report that the response has been overwhelmingly positive. We have already had over 10 responses from both city and county schools. Through this elementary school outreach initiative, we hope to increase awareness about the role of student trustee and empower students to become leaders in their school and get involved in their school community. Preparations continue for our 10th annual Student Leadership Conference on October 29th. We are busy finalizing some interactive activities for students, and we are creating a how-to video for Random Act of Kindness Day. The Windsor-Essex Community Foundation will show the video on their social media channels in the week leading up to Random Act of Kindness Day, and we will show the video at the leadership conference to give students ideas they can use at their own schools to promote kindness. For our own Random Act of Kindness Day activity, Student Senate plans to volunteer at the John McGivney Children's Center. In other news, I attended OSTA's Student Working Group Conference to transition into my role as Student Wellbeing Co-Chair. The conference was informative and very helpful in setting us up for success this year. October 10th was World Mental Health Day, and our working group released an open letter addressing mental health and education. The letter can be found on OSTA AECO's Twitter feed at OSTAAECO and online at osta-aeco.org. Thank you, Dr. Kelly, for supporting me in this professional development opportunity. This weekend, Nabil and I travel to Toronto for OSTA's Fall General Meeting. Guest speakers include Nora Marsh, CEO of EQAO, and Nancy Naylor, Deputy Minister of Education. We are very much looking forward to this opportunity for professional learning and networking with students from across the province. Thank you once again, Director Kelly, for supporting Nabil and I in this opportunity.
That sounds like a great opportunity. Thank you for that. Any questions for student trustee Jane? Okay, seeing none. Student trustee Johnny, take it away with the student of the month.
The student of the month for October is Celia Newdorf, a grade 12 student at Kingsville District High School. Celia is an outstanding student and is invested in both the school and greater Kingsville community. She has achieved above 90 average in every year she has been in high school. She helps Kingsville with their feeder school sports tournaments and many other activities. Her most recent initiative is starting a peer support group where students can talk with others about their issues that are going on in their lives and seek support from others who may have gone through the same thing. Celia is also an engaged member in her local church, helping kids in their classrooms and leading youth programs, children's camps, and community outreach. This past summer, Celia went on a mission trip to Guatemala to help build a school and spend time with children in some of the small villages there. Congratulations, Celia, for being selected by Student Senate as the October Student of the Month.
Congratulations, Celia. Come on up to the front. Thank you so much. You're an excellent role model for all of us. Thank you. Congratulations. Moving on in presentations, up next we have the operational plan for 2019 to 2020. Just a reminder to trustees of our bylaws, there are 15 minutes per presentation, plus 15 minutes total for trustee questions. Go ahead, Director Kelly. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, it is my pleasure to present the 2019-2020 operational plan. This is an extensive plan. I will be only providing highlights, and the senior team is here should you have any questions about specifics. Thank you to, again, the senior team for putting this together, and also the Board of Trustees for the direction set by the strategic plan, and to Melissa Leboeuf, who always brings it all together and makes it coherent. Appreciate it. In the area of confident learners, again, a key of our strategic plan, we have one of the things we talk about is achieving individual success in the pathway of their choice. And math, which we didn't highlight in the previous plan presentation, but we always are working on, is a top concern for us. We have set and will continue to set goals of improvement in the area of mathematics. And I know Trustee Halberstadt pointed out that we had high goals, and so we have moved those to 2% and 3%, which we think is more realistic within a year, so we've adjusted those slightly. They're different in our board improvement plan than they are in the operational plan. The operational plan speaks to a one-year agenda. We have set goals to increase both primary and junior math scores by 2%, as I noted. In particular, we'll be focusing on our English language learner students as well as students with special needs. Most of that is noted at the beginning of the operational plan on page 1. These goals, as I said, are one-year goals as opposed to what's noted on the board improvement plan, which is a 2-year plan. In the area of secondary mathematics, we are having some success and we have made some gains. And I think one of the things that we're going to focus on this year, as we've seen that gain from grade 6 to grade 9, is how can we highlight best practices across the system? We have some schools that are doing particularly well, and how can we share those practices across the system? And we are going to try to spread that knowledge, and so that will be a focus, I know, for the superintendents in secondary, and particularly Superintendent Canty. With respect to OSSLT, again, we have made some gains. We believe that we can score higher on that. And you will notice in that area, you will see a focus on using the intervention generator, which is something that Superintendent Canty and Jay Lynn have been working on to better target the needs within the area of the OSSL achievement and better ensure that we are targeting students and getting the required assistance they need in the area of literacy. We will also work to develop resources to support teachers in subject-specific ways and differentiate assessments across all subject disciplines in the secondary panel. And of course, we're making use of Lexia at the secondary panel, which is our reading program, which we have good success at. But again, we hope to see more gains there. And in addition, we have set ambitious targets in the area of grad rates, as that is a priority for us. In the area of specialized programs, we are working toward IB accreditation and increasing student participation. You will note in the IB sections, it's mentioned in both the elementary and secondary panel, we continue to support and try to gain participation, and always well received, and students are certainly engaging in that, as our staff, I might add. One thing that I note, and this is something that the senior team has committed to, is supporting learners in the school on an academic journey. In other words, being in schools, being with principals in terms of their commitment to the professional development sessions. We do that, and we do district reviews and such, but there would be an increased commitment. So I want to thank the senior team for the leadership they've shown with respect to being in and really monitoring the work on a level that perhaps we could do, and having discussions around that and comparing and looking at how we could work together to do better. In the area of practicing and promoting positive and healthy behaviors, you will see a number of things that we're focusing on. I think some of this was mentioned by Dr. Pike during the presentation last year in the climate survey, and there are a number of hours of sleep is an area of focus for us, and we always want to ensure that students have good sleep. I don't know about you, but all of us probably need good sleep, and it does really, we know, help performance. Problem-solving strategies for students to manage stress will be another area of focus, in addition to skills to decrease student worrying. All of these things, we know that our students come with a great deal of anxiety, and we want to ensure that they have the coping strategies to be able to cope. You will also see in the plan a focus on developing, implementing, and delivering a school skills program that is to enhance skills in students who are identified with ASD. And the focus here will include social, communication, and self-regulation with the implementation of the applied behavioral analysis. And that will be a focus for our special education department. Acting responsibly to self and others is always a focus for us. And this year, our kindness campaign in our schools will be kicking off during our bullying prevention and interventions week. Part of acting responsibly to self and others is also parent engagement, and we will work with administrators. I know Superintendent Dr. Hillman this is a priority for him, is to work with administrators to enhance parent and family engagement strategies. Again, character education. You'll see a theme here of lots of focus on well-being and character. That implementation will be monitored more closely this year. I know Superintendent Dr. Kerhout introduced a lot of that work and has partnered with United Way on a number of things. And again, that work will continue, and we'll continue to monitor the effectiveness of that. You will note a new direction on the operational plan, and I think that Trustee Sipcar actually set this direction in the area of active transportation, and that is really focusing on partnerships and increasing awareness of what being active transport means, and we have a plan and a committee moving forward in that area. Another key pillar of our engaged communities, and that means responding to the needs of our learners. This year you'll see a focus on support to increase supports for French immersion students who have learning disabilities through earlier identification and increasing teacher capacity in both identifying and assisting struggling readers. Again, we want to make sure that all students get the supports they need. We will also continue to identify opportunities to provide access for parents so that they have resources to support their children. An increased focus here will be on resources to support mathematical learning for all students, and so parents can help their students with that. Another key strategic direction in the plan is that of partnering to enhance outcomes. I think we do this very well, and it would be really hard for me to mention even an eighth of the partnerships that we have going. But one thing that we have been working on, it's really a priority in our board, is the arts. And I'm not so sure we always highlight that as much. And I certainly know when I first came to the board, I was so impressed how much we do for the arts. And I know with cutbacks, a lot of times people have made choices in the other boards in implementing maybe less in the way of the arts. But I think we've done a really good job. And I think there's another good example of how we've partnered to enhance outcomes. It also fits the goal of responding to the needs of our learners, because not all students respond to the same things, and many of the arts engage our students. Our partnership with the Windsor Symphony Orchestra, and our goal was here to set increased participation with that by 5%. Robert Franz met with principals to show the great programming that they offer, and is very enthusiastic about working with us, so that's a great partnership. We also have set direction around increasing the number of classes engaged in the learning through Arts Can Teach. And as we move to a new ESL model over the last couple of years, we've worked to extend learning opportunities outside the day for our ELL students, but also to make sure that we're integrating those students more so that we know that their language skills are increasing. And we've had some really good success last year as reported. We come from a diverse region, and we represent a lot of different groups. And again, this year we will continue work with our IEAC and the expansion of Native Studies courses across the district, which provides an Indigenous perspective and lens through which to study. Will be in our grade 11 English courses, and more of them, and that will increase over time. Another commitment of that group is the human resources practices will be examined through the Indigenous lens. And again, I know that we've had good partnerships between the HR department and the curriculum department in that area. Again, the deep diversity workplace continuum, as noted in the previous plan, will continue to be expanded across the district to ensure understanding across employees. Environmental stewardship is another pillar, and one of those things involves budget alignment with strategic priorities. Now, the business department and program together are working to develop and share best practices in the area of energy conservation, waste minimization, and school ground greening to the larger school community. Some big projects there. There's a reimagined eco schools program to reach students in every school, and greater awareness and adoption of those practices advocated by the eco schools, again, will be a focus for those departments. Reducing energy, of course, is always something we need to be focused on, and our goal here is to reduce energy and water consumption by 2% respectively, and ensure that there are efficiencies in all the applicable capital projects. And again, sometimes that means getting things done on time and ensuring that they're efficient in terms of their energy, and actually getting ministry approval for things could be part of that efficiency at times as well. So we're working hard, and we just had, for example, tonight the Kingsville Lands funding approved. We hope to have more to say about that soon in terms of the location, but at least we have the funding approved from that, again, which is one of those steps in the long capital process. We will continue to implement the LED lighting retrofit program, which we have been doing, and again, that helps with our costs, and also conduct energy audit of schools on a regular basis for efficiencies. One of the big projects this year, under the leadership of Superintendent Mills, so this is a big project, is the introduction of a new student information system. And if you've ever been in an organization that has any kind of information system, you know that that's a big deal. But this will be a new Aspen, a program by Follett. It's a comprehensive tool really that can perform tasks and manage information relating to the academic status of students. Again, a big implementation, something like this takes a good year, or maybe longer, I don't know, but it takes some time, and so again, that's well underway. An effective and responsible use of board resources. One of the things that we believe we can affect change in a larger school community, and I think this was brought forward by trustees as well, is the adoption of the Single-Use Plastics Reduction Committee. This would be a 1 to 3 year phased-in approach with a multidisciplinary committee, and that would be looking at being one of the first school boards in Ontario to actually tackle this. As much as we can, the reduction, maybe almost elimination of single-use plastics across the district. Again, so admirable, and we will work on that. Another goal in this area also involves increasing the use of our libraries. Again, something that we maybe haven't looked at, and I know Superintendent Howe has talked about this, but to increase the circulation by about 3%, and focus really on about 10 schools for their innovations configurations, because we need to make libraries more effective, more efficient, and having students use them, and good sustainable use of resources. So again, I think a really good goal for us to be looking at. There's some good examples across the system, but the circulation and use of libraries and innovation in them varies substantially, I think, across the district. In the area of efficiencies, there's always computer programming and things that we have to look at. SparkRock, which is one of our programs that has been introduced, will allow for a more efficient budget tracking, will assist our finance department, as well as other departments in that kind of priority. And the last and biggest last area in terms of ethical stewardship would be that of safe and welcoming schools. Again, this is an important piece for us, that our facilities and whatever are ready and welcoming to our students. That means things like literally reducing slip, trips, and falls for our staff and students in the system. Another goal here, and I don't think I've seen this before, is reducing the custodial supplies and storage space. So we're reducing the chemical storage in our system. So again, a worthy goal. And another way that we hope to create safe and welcoming schools is the Empower Reading program. And by this, I mean, it's important we think that parents and guardians are more involved in that, understanding what Empower's capacity is, so that they can further support their children and welcome them into the journey along the reading journey. So those are some of the goals that we've set for the operational plan for the 2019-20 school year. And again, only a few highlights of the many things that we are doing. Some new directions, some that we're staying the course on, and the senior team and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Trustee Burgess, were you going to bring a motion? Trustee Burgess?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I believe since it's at presentation, I believe that a motion to formally receive this report is in order. So I would move receipt of this report since it's not found in the report section. So my motion is to receive.
I do find that motion to be in order as well. So what Trustee Burgess is referring to is under M, reports to be received. There is also a report of the Director of Education. And I would imagine that there will be questions not only to Director Kelly's presentation, but also to the paper report. So is there a seconder to receive the report as well? Trustee Halberstadt, any comments, questions? All those in support of
I have
receiving?
a question.
Trustee Hatfield?
Just procedurally, we don't normally have a motion to accept presentations or reports, so I'm just a little bit confused on where the motion is coming from.
Trustee Burgess?
Well, normally we would have it at report, and we have received it. Thank you very much. We have actually received it as a report, but I'd like to formalize that. It is a presentation, so I'd like to move, and it has been seconded, and I will see if it has support.
Okay, then
Any
that's the
further
first time.
comments, or Trustee Hatfield?
Yeah, so could I ask about the precedence on having motions on receiving presentations? We've never done that before either.
So where this is coming from, I don't anticipate that we would be receiving every report that's listed under M. I think what Trustee Burgess is trying to do is recognizing that not only would trustees have questions about the presentation right now, there would probably be questions stemming from the operation, the director's report, which is M1, which directly relate to the
So the
presentation.
motion is to accept the presentation?
The motion is to accept the report as well.
Okay. Well, something new. Okay.
Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in support of accepting the report of the Director of Education? Any opposed? Seeing none, and that carries. Okay, we will move to trustee question on the presentation as well as on the report. Any questions from trustees? Trustee Olmsted.
Mine is more of a comment. I was literally thrilled. I did a little dance of joy to see on page handwritten 26 that we are going to have a kindness campaign in our schools. I have run these several times, and I know firsthand that you have to teach kindness to children in their youth for adults to be kind. And so I was overjoyed to see this, and I applaud administration for taking this initiative. And if there's anything that I can do to help, I'm definitely on board. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Higgison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Madam Chair, to administration. I noticed a few times, and thank you very much for the presentation. I noticed a few times we mentioned the IEAC and Indigenous protocols that we're using both in HR practices and in our curriculum. And I wondered if we could touch on the use of Jordan's principle to support some of that work.
Thank you for that. That's a very good point. Jordan's principle has allowed us to be able to hire staff to support students directly. We have a social worker in our system who's been very supportive with families. As a result of that, we've been able to gain a number of staff to support our Indigenous students. And yes, and it is really assisted, and I know families are very grateful for that. So thank you for raising that. That's something that Superintendent Wilcox and Dr. Claire Howard have worked with as well. And again, I think we haven't made as much use of it as we probably could over the last year. So I'm glad to see that we're able to do that.
Any further questions from trustees? Trustee Sipkar?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, thank you for the presentation. I appreciated seeing a few things that I know that trustees have brought forward over the last year, so I appreciated that. I did want to ask about, this was one thing that didn't come up in the presentation on page handwritten 39, which is the community partnerships. And it's something that I noticed that is recurring on our operational plan. I believe it's on the strategic plan, if I'm not mistaken. I just wondered, how are we measuring changes in this year over year? Anecdotally, feedback I hear from the community is that there are notices that go out, that there are advertisements, but I'm wondering if our outcomes, if the expected outcomes are effective in tracking, are tracking their effectiveness, and wondering if there are different ways that we can reach out to community partners.
Yeah, this is one way that we reach out to community partners, but people are certainly able to approach us at any time. I would think that there are also, if you're talking only about the capital or you're just talking about partnerships in general, I think sometimes many of those partnerships come to us. The Windsor Symphony might be an example. There are many examples of that come to us and that we're working with all the time that I don't even think we tend to think anymore that are partnerships because we take them so for granted. So I believe we're certainly open to them with respect to all curriculum issues. Anything that that I know that I've sent to superintendents, they're certainly willing to pursue if it's viable. With respect to buildings and capital, which is really I think what's highlighted here, we have had some pretty successful partnerships also at the Belt River, for example, would be one thing. And so we are open to those things, and we could always be more open to them. There are barriers, as you know, but how are we actually measuring track? I guess the money spent. Have we spent some of the community money that was spent? We did provide that money. And then what kind of community partnerships are we using to be able to enhance student achievement? Some of our on track to success with United Way would be an example. But again, I think there's lots of examples. I'm not sure what you'd be looking for, but more detail in the partnerships might help in here.
Trustee Sipkar?
Yeah, that was just going to be my comment, was maybe more detail, so we have a fuller scope both in capital and just partnerships for curriculum purposes. Like I thought of the symphony, and I wondered how does that fit in, and how do we effectively measure those outcomes to know that we're achieving them? So that was kind of, but you touched on it at the end.
Yeah, that's a good point. And one of the things we might want to do and think about during some of the presentations we do, perhaps in Education Committee and such, is articulate what those partnerships are through many of the things that we're doing and make explicit through the presentations. I think that's a good suggestion. Sometimes we don't do that because we take them for granted. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Trustee Higginson?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I wanted to highlight and ask a question about some of the arts collaborations that we have, Windsor Symphony Orchestra, Arts Can Teach, Art Gallery. I noticed that it was new, and I am super thrilled about that. I was just reading an article, actually, and engaging with people on social media about the connections between arts education and like a social sciences education and STEM, and how it brings meaning to each. So I was just wondering if there's deliberate connections to those things being developed with this kind of new curriculum, or some of these deliberate kind of connections throughout the community, if there are connections between kind of our STEM disciplines and how we make meaning from those disciplines using the arts.
I'm going to say yes to that, but I'm going to ask Superintendent Howitt to respond more specifically to that.
Superintendent Howitt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, our intentions whenever we collaborate with any of our community partners is around supporting teaching and learning in our schools. So we've made a very deliberate attempt to partner with the Windsor Symphony and to partner with Arts Can Teach and to partner with the Art Gallery to support the arts in our schools because we know it supports overall learning. Now, one of the opportunities that have provided itself over the years with decreasing funds available to support is it has forced us to become even more precise in our actions. And so we work with people like Karen McClellan from Arts Can Teach to work with the artists to make connections around curriculum. And that is in the area of literacy, it's in the area of mathematics, it's in the area of science. So very, very distinctive connections because students exposed to the arts do tend to perform better as well.
Thank you. Any further questions from trustees for the director? Trustee Halberstadt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'd be remiss not to ask about the math. And as you noted, our goals are down from 5% improvements to 2%. And I also noticed that we're continuing to implement the Math Task Force recommendations, which is about 4 or 5 years now old. Three. Is there any, I noticed there's nothing, doesn't seem to be anything new with regard to the approach to teaching math. Is there anything different than the last operational plan that we had with, you know, that was looking for a 5% increase, now it's a 2%. But are we intensifying what we've already been doing, or is there some new stuff in there?
I'm just going to say there are two, I think, more deliberate things in terms of superintendent involvement in the learning at the school level and also principal commitment to that with superintendents. And further, in the secondary panel, I think I did mention the fact that we'd be sharing practices across across the board, that there are some really successful models there. I don't think we've articulated them at the level maybe we should have in the past. And then I'll look to you, Claire.
This is our own board, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Superintendent Howitt.
I would echo the director's comments. I think one of the biggest changes is the level of involvement of the superintendent at the school level in supporting the overall messaging and some more specific supports for principals. And that goal hasn't been diminished. It's just the production in the 1 year, the goal for the 1 year. The overall trend in the BIPSA is a 3-year goal, and we're in year 2 of that. So the aggressiveness in terms of what we want to achieve is not diminished, and we're continuing with the plan that was guided with professionals external to the board as well, like Dr. Doug McDougall, like Kathy Bruce. They have continued to tell us to stay with that building of capacity in the area of content, and in the area of how we teach pedagogy.
One other item, and that's the bullying plan. And, you know, we are all very saddened with the tragedy in Hamilton. I noticed that the ministry is now giving $40 million to address the bullying issues across the province. I'm just wondering if we might be able to tap into some of that and use it to help with our anti-bullying program.
Superintendent Pike.
First of all, condolences to the family and to the school community of what has happened. As for the money, we always welcome money, certainly in our board and other boards, in order to do the goals or to achieve the goals that we want to achieve for this year. While we've only got one thing listed here from the bullying plan, which is the kindness, there's lots of other things that we are working on with our administrators, and certainly looking at the data that we receive from the school climate survey and what areas we really need to target so that we can decrease those numbers for next time we do the school climate survey.
Part of that would be, I guess, the kindness campaign would roll into that initiative, right?
That's correct. The kindness campaign, we're very excited. We did something very similar 2 years ago with great results, and so this year we're looking for 100% participation from all of our schools and what their campaign would look like based on their particular data.
Thank you. Any further questions from trustees? Student trustee Jane.
So I have a question about page 27 with the increased problem-solving strategies to manage stress. I noticed that an expected outcome is for the social media campaign to promote positive strategies. I just am wondering who exactly will this be targeting, because from what I understand, we have a Twitter in terms of like social media. So, like, who is this campaign directed towards?
Superintendent Pike.
Thank you for the question. On our action steps this year, we're really focusing on youth and asking what they see is the issues for chronic absenteeism, because most times it's about stress. So we're really going after youth to find out what is causing them stress, what does that look like, and from that we are having our campaign for social media around what they're suggesting that we do. So this is not going to be adults saying what you have to do. This is going to be youth saying to adults, this is what you need to do. So whatever a medium that we need to do is what we're going to be promoting our campaign on.
Absolutely.
I feel like youth these days are most active on Instagram. So if the board can get on like an Instagram ad campaign that targets people who are in this area, I think that would be really helpful in in executing a successful social media campaign that actually allows us to promote the positive strategies that we're attempting to give to students.
So thank you. We've heard that before in terms of what we have to look and modern and update what we think is social media compared to what youth is using. So thank you for that feedback.
Thank you very much. Any further questions from trustees? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation. There are no delegations tonight. No one on the speakers list. We are at new business. We have 5 notices of motion to consider tonight. And again, just a reminder to trustees that each member can speak twice to the motion. Of course, that also applies to any amendments that might come forward as well. So the first item of new business is L1, a notice of motion from Trustee Sipcar. You have the motion before you. Trustee Sipcar, would you like to move that motion?
Yes, I will move it.
Is there a seconder? Trustee Halberstadt? Trustee Sipcar, would you like to speak to it?
I have a point of clarification first.
And then I would also like
One
to...
moment, Trustee Sipcar. Trustee Hatfield, go ahead.
Yeah, I just am not clear if it's the one as printed in our agenda or if it's the one that I got just a little while ago that's been rewritten.
I think there's going to be a motion to substitute. Trustee Hatfield.
Okay, but the motion on the floor is to... Could you repeat the motion? I thought the motion was to put this motion on the floor as printed. I thought that's what was said.
The motion on the floor currently is the recommendation as printed in your agenda package.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. Trustee Sipcar.
And on that note, I would like to motion to substitute in its place that the GECDSB conduct a public consultation process for all new elementary and secondary school builds and additions. This will include a survey of the school community, an open public meeting to present draft plans at minimum 10 days prior to plans going to the Board of Trustees, and having those plans posted to the GECDSB website at the same time. And if I get a seconder, I can speak to why.
Is there a seconder to the substitute? Trustee Halberstadt, thank you. Trustee Sipcar, go ahead.
So after speaking with administration over the summer, I felt it was best to change the wording of the motion to accurately reflect the spirit of the motion, and also to make sure it was in line with administration's timeline so that it didn't hold up any capital projects. So the inclusion of the draft plans, having a separate public meeting prior to board approval, is simply to update the school community and address any concerns in advance of the board meeting. So this would be an opportunity for parents to ask questions, seek feedback, make minimal recommendations if administrator is amenable, because from my understanding at that point it would be very costly to go back and redesign the school. So that is the reason to include the survey up front. From my understanding, admin can typically do this, but doesn't necessarily, hasn't been consistent between elementary and secondary schools. And so this is just to clarify the language to, and actually have more transparency with the process so that the school community feels included and is able to ask their questions in advance. So that is the reason for the substitution.
Any questions related to the substitution, the proposed substituted motion? Okay, seeing none. All those in support, this is a simple majority. All those in support of the substituted motion? Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. The substituted motion is now the main motion. And now I will open the floor back up to you, Trustee Sipcar, to comment on the main motion.
So this motion was made in response to hearing some of the concerns from parents about the Mercer Street School in June. We received our board packages on the Friday, the meeting was on the Tuesday, and that didn't really allow a lot of time for the parents in the community to be able to digest the information. And many parents were actually very supportive of the plans but didn't necessarily know about them. And so this is just a way to mitigate some of that concern that is there, and also to get the feedback in advance of board meetings via the public meetings, so that way that all those concerns can be addressed in a more, I would say, appropriate format to have conversations, as opposed to at a more formal board meeting. So that was the reason for the motion.
Thank you, Trustee Sipcar. Any comments, questions? Trustee Burgess?
It's a question, I think for administration for clarification. I'm wondering when in the process we do the space template application to the capital finance branch. In other words, that request for how many classrooms of what kind and whatever that the ministry now requires of us.
Director Kelly?
Yeah, I can answer that. That's very upfront in the process, very near the beginning of the process. And so it's not something that shows a ton of detail. It's just a high-level overview. And so that is usually done quite early, as I recall.
Any further questions, comments from trustees? Trustee Higgison?
Just a comment. I'm going to be supporting the motion. I think it's always a good idea to consult with the public, especially when you're looking at a neighborhood. You make investments in your home in a neighborhood. You're making investments based on largely where your kids are going to go to school, where you work, how you get around your neighborhood, what it looks like, and I think inviting the community to have a say in the place they're going to send their kids, in the place that they're going to walk by every day and welcome as part of their community. I think it's a great idea to involve the public as much as possible in welcoming that sort of addition to their neighborhood. It allows them to feel involved in the processes that we do here, which I think is always a good thing. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Thanks, Trustee Higgison. Anything further? Okay, seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in support of the substituted motion, which is now the main motion. Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. Thank you. Okay, we are now at L2, which is a notice of motion from Trustee Hatfield, and you have it printed in your agenda. Trustee Hatfield, would you like to put the motion on the floor?
Yes, please.
Is there a seconder? Trustee Leclerc? Trustee Hatfield, would you like to speak to it?
Sure. If memory serves me correctly, we have had in years past reports on portables. It's a topic that trustees hear about often from parents, and I think that it's just good practice to keep the trustees informed of what our situation is with regard to portables, as opposed to us having to drive around to look at all the schools ourselves. I don't know if an annual report is suitable, or if maybe every other year, because I don't know that there's much movement from year to year. But I would ask that question of administration, and I'm not sure that my starting date of November 2019 is the best suggestion. Maybe there's a time of the year that Facility Services actually prepares a report that would be similar to this. But in terms of the information, I think it would be very useful for trustees to have this in addressing questions from parents in particular. So I hope the trustees would support this, and I would ask if administration could just address the frequency of the report and whether or not there's a time of the year that might be better for providing the report.
Thank you. Director Kelly?
Yeah, we have no problem doing this. It's actually contained within the long-term accommodation plan presently, but what isn't contained is a chart, an overview. So we thought we'd do this as an appendices to the long-term accommodation plan. We usually do bring that forward November, December. I'm wondering if in case it's not met the November deadline, but perhaps the fall winter of a year, because we don't always have it ready for November. I look to Superintendent Allwender, but do you think you could make that work in terms of November?
Superintendent Allwender?
Yeah, November wouldn't be a problem. The portables, we know how many we're going to need for the school year as soon as reorganization is done with staffing in elementary.
Thank you.
Well,
Does that
then-
answer your question, Trustee Hatfield?
It does, so I'll let the motion stand as it is, and I think that Director Kelly kind of hit on my point that, to see all that information together in one place is really what I'm looking for. So that would really be helpful.
Thank you. Anything further from trustees? Questions? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in support of the motion as presented? Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
You are welcome. We are now at L3, a notice of motion from Trustee Halberstadt. Trustee Halberstadt, would you like to move the motion?
Yes, I move the motion, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to read all of the 6 bullets that come with it, but the basic idea is
Okay, I need a seconder first.
Okay.
Trustee Leclerc, take it away, Trustee Halberstadt.
Thank you. Yeah, the basic idea is to prepare for administration to report on the status and condition of Windsor Stadium and the costs and opportunities to upgrade the facilities for expanded use. The timeline, and I ran this by administration as I did all of these bullet points that they helped me with. The timeline would be the first meeting in February to come back to the board, this report, and I think administration is good with that. Just the rationale, the stadium, and I haven't verified this yet, but I'm told it's about 100 years old, and it was built in the 1920s, and most of the components have not been upgraded for many years or decades. I attended a game here on Friday night. It was like going back into time when I used to cover high school football. But I attended a game between Kennedy and Herman, and noted that many elements of the original stadium are no longer in service. The dressing rooms, concession stands, and washrooms have all been padlocked. Only 2 porta-johns were available for the fans. And I understand in talking with administration preliminarily that the lights need replacing. I noticed on Friday that the PA system was not in service. The scoreboard was not working properly, and apparently goes on the blink fairly frequently. It was actually a very good game. Unfortunately, Kennedy from my ward couldn't beat Herman. Herman remained unbeaten, but it was a good game, and there was a good crowd sitting in a stadium bleachers that has been there forever. There was about 800 people there. And who sat in the concrete grandstands crying out for a replacement of it. I think that we need that, or I think we've got to tear it down or do something with it. Because of the deficiencies and a lack of artificial turf, the facility is used only by Kennedy for games and practices, where once they used to play double hitters and triple hitter football games and soccer games there. And now it's basically only a facility for the school there, which is Kennedy. I think this motion is basically talking about ethical stewardship, which we've heard about tonight. It's in our mission, which is cleanliness, condition. There's 6 parts of ethical stewardship: cleanliness, conditions, comfort, maintenance, customer service, and partnership. And I think all of those could apply to hopefully upgrading the Windsor Stadium at a point in time. Of course, it costs a lot of money, and that's going to be an issue for sure. I have had some contact with Infrastructure Ontario and Infrastructure Canada, which does have a program for recreational grants for recreational facilities in Ontario and Canada. In fact, Infrastructure Ontario is working on a grant with Tecumseh for their new sportsplex, up to 70%, I understand. So that's basically it. I think it's time to put it out there. I have had people expressing interest in helping with the funding of upgrading this facility or operating this facility, and I think once the report comes back, those opportunities might come to the surface.
Thank you, Trustee Halberstadt. Any comments, questions? Trustee Burgess?
So just for clarification, I support the motion because what I see here is the motion is to prepare a report, not to necessarily take action on any of the things, but to prepare that report and I'm assuming that the concerns and the recognition of whatever potential partnerships, et cetera, will be made known to administration so that when the report comes back, we'll have all that information. I was just wondering about the timeline.
Thank you. I did have a conversation with Trustee Halberstadt regarding that timing, and we don't foresee any issues having that report ready for the timeline that he's asked for.
Thank you. Any further questions from trustees, comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in support of the motion as presented? Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. Thank you. Okay, we are now at what was originally L5. It is now L4. That is a notice of motion. Your next notice of motion, Trustee Halberstadt. Go ahead. Oh, wait. Can you move it, please?
Yes, I'd like to move my motion.
Thank you.
and
I need a seconder. Trustee Sibcar, Trustee Halberstadt.
Yeah, and I would like to remove reference to a business case. In speaking to administration, again, that is a fairly onerous task for them to complete. But the idea is basically to provide public information to the public information on the annual capital priorities list for the last 5 years, and going forward to provide rolling 5-year lists and rationale for determining these priorities. And basically, the rationale for that is to provide trustees and constituents with up-to-date framework and tracking of the board's long-term accommodation planning as it pertains to the region's growth, population, and development patterns, enrollment increases and declines, and could lead to boundary changes, school closings, and new builds with political implications. So that's basically the rationale.
Okay, were you making a motion to amend?
Just take out the reference to the business case.
Is there a seconder for that? Trustee Sibcar? Any comments, questions? Trustee Burgess?
I think it needs a little bit of wordsmithing because it doesn't make sense if you just strike the word business cases. So I think, did you have it rewritten? Okay, does it say something like including some rationale?
Yes. And rationale for determining. I move that administration provide as public information the annual capital priority lists for the last 5 years, and in future years provide rolling 5-year lists and rationale for determining these priorities. So it takes out business case, but rationale is still in there.
Okay, let me try that again. So that administration provide as public information the capital priority lists for the last 5 years, and in future years, rolling 5-year lists. Provide rolling 5-year lists. And rationale. Melissa, you're with us so far? Pardon me, you'd like it in writing?
I would also like it in writing.
Absolutely. Do you want it now so you can work from it in case there are any further amendments? Okay, thank you. Okay, so that administration provided public information, the capital priority lists for the last 5 years and in future years, rolling 5-year lists. Provide rolling 5-year list. I wrote provide down too. And rationale for determining these priorities. Okay. Any questions from trustees, comments?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Trustee Hatfield.
Okay, thanks. I guess first I'll comment that I'm just a little bit confused about what the notice of motion is trying to accomplish. We already provide the public information on our capital priorities every year, and then we also get the long-term accommodation reports, which provide background and rationale for how we develop our capital priority lists. And so I don't know if this is similar to like what I was asking for on the portables, to just have it all in front of me at one time, or if this is for something new, because certainly the capital priority list is presented in public at a board meeting, as is all the rationale that goes with that report, as well as the long-term accommodation. So I guess
Trustee Hatfield?
I'm not sure.
Excuse me, just to clarify. So
I'm not
is
sure
this,
what we're looking for?
or is this comment on the amendment or on the motion as a whole?
The amended motion, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. I cut you off. Do you need to continue?
No, if I need clarification, because I'm not really understanding what's being asked for here.
Okay. Trustee Halberstadt, can you clarify?
Ordered.
Trustee Sipkar?
We have to vote on the amendment.
Okay, then I'll
We
re-ask.
will vote
my
on
question
the
after
amendment.
that.
My understanding from Trustee Hatfield is that these comments are related to the amendment. I see it that way as well. Trustee Halberstadt?
Yeah, I think the information is out there. Again, it's much like the portables. It's to put it to get all together so that annually the trustees will see the 5-year capital priority list, which we just got a couple of weeks ago. There was a couple of surprises in there, and I think to me anyway, and I think to some other trustees. So this would the rolling 5-year list, I think, would provide trustees and constituencies, as I said, constituents with an up-to-date framework and tracking of the board's long-term accommodation planning as it pertains to the region's growth, population, development patterns, enrollment increases and declines, and which could lead to boundary changes, school closings, and new buildings.
Yeah,
So I think it's the information is there. I think it's just gathering it. It could be done very efficiently. I talked to the director about it, and her concern was to take the business case out, which I did.
Any further comments on the proposed amendment? Trustee Burgess.
I support the amendment, the way it's done, and I know that the business cases themselves are huge and onerous, and they're required by the ministry, and I don't think that's necessarily needed for what we want. So I appreciate the amendment, but I just want to, I guess, also say I support it because in the past we've received the capital priority list at a different time than we have what is now the long-term accommodations plan. And we've never had it where we could compare 5 years. So in order to answer some of the questions that have arisen when we have received the capital priority list of, well, what did we do prior, etc., this would be very helpful. I would find this very helpful. Yes, we have had this information. The rationale has been given with answers to questions that we've asked. So we've had like a verbal rationale given. It's been inconsistent in any kind of written report. But and we don't do minutes verbatim, so it's not that we haven't had the information, but it's a way of collating it so that we can actually make some sense of it. So I appreciate the amendment, and I appreciate the motion.
Director Kelly?
Just one caution about, I'm glad to do this, but you're sometimes comparing apples and oranges. In other words, the criteria that the ministry might be using to select or what they ask us to put in a capital priorities could differ from year to year. And so that's one of just the cautions, and we would certainly try to explain that, but they're not always the same.
Thank you for that. Anything further on the amendment? Okay, all those in support of the amendment? Any opposed? Okay, and the amendment carries. Okay, now I'm going to try to read this again. Okay, so the main motion is now that administration provide as public information the capital priority lists for the last 5 years, and in future years provide rolling 5-year lists and rationale for determining these priorities. Okay. Any comments or questions on the main motion? Trustee Sipkar.
Through you, Madam Chair, my question was going to be similar to Director Kelly's. Is this, to get clarification, I guess, is this about capital priorities for new capital projects, or is this capital priorities for, and this is maybe just me being a new trustee, for any sort of, what's the word I'm looking for when you have to? Yeah, renovations, additions to new schools.
Yeah, that's all included, yeah.
Director Kelly?
I think what you're talking about here, well, what I know you're talking about is capital priorities. Another, the major big projects that we submit to the ministry. Sometimes that could be 3 things, sometimes that could be 5, and they're usually specified criteria by the Ministry of Education. That's what capital priorities is. That's what we mean by that.
Any further questions from trustees? Trustee Sipkar?
So to further clarify, when the list was brought to us last month, there's about 10 priorities on that. 7, okay. Would that be over the last 5 years? Would you have a list that you were proposed, but then you only submitted 3 of them? Would you be providing that entire list, or just what was submitted to the ministry?
Director Kelly?
We would only be supplying what was sent to the ministry, what was approved by the board. So what was approved by the board was submitted. So that's what we would provide. Sometimes that's 3 things, sometimes that's 7 things, sometimes that's 10.
Thank you. Any further questions on the main motion? Okay, I will call the question then. All those in support of the motion as amended? Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. Thank you. Okay, we are now at previously L6, now L5, a recommendation, notice of motion from Trustee Higgison as presented. Trustee Higgison, would you like to move the motion?
Yes, please.
And is there a seconder? Trustee Cook. Trustee Higgison, would you like to speak to it?
Certainly, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. This is just a general practice I think we should be engaging in as elected members. We're accountable to communication to parents and the public, and making this information more transparent and accessible both to parents, and gives them some information on which we base our decisions. And at a time when trust and time are dwindling commodities, I think we can give the public and parents and guardians who entrust their children to our stewardship access to all the information that we use. And so I think it's just good practice to post these alongside. We have our minutes that are posted to the website, and I think it would be good practice to post the public agendas as well, so we can, I know I would appreciate this as a new trustee to have some of the things to refer back to within the minutes. And as a parent, there are some of the things that I would like to look up that take a little bit more digging that I don't always have the time to do. If the public agendas were available to me on the website alongside the minutes, I think that would offer me some more engagement.
Any questions or comments? Trustee Burgess?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, because I would have just asked you prior to, but I'm assuming that these are approved agendas because the draft agendas are already there, but I don't see any purpose necessarily in keeping draft agendas once the agenda is actually approved. So I'm assuming that in this motion. And I do have some concerns about continuing in perpetuity. Perpetuity to me means like forever. And I don't see why we would want to keep, we have rules for record keeping, et cetera, and past so many years, it doesn't make sense to me to keep draft, or approved agendas.
Trustee Higginson, would you like to speak to that question?
So I'm fine to remove perpetuity and to keep it along with our regular record keeping that the procedures that we follow. If there are practices that we are following, I'd like that put in a procedure. But if there are procedures that we follow, I'm happy to amend this to.
So I don't know if we need an amendment, but I would strike "and continuing in perpetuity" as an amendment, and just end the motion with meeting, October 15th meeting, period. It's not practice and procedure, as far as I know, is record keeping, it's law. We're obligated to keep it so many years, and I think past that, we don't need to.
Director Kelly?
Yeah, we do keep a master list, is my understanding, I looked to Melissa there, of this for forever. They're a permanent record of the board. So if anybody wanted that information, they could certainly ask. It's just what is posted on the website right now. And most boards, when you look at it, post them for 3-4 years. You don't see many that go beyond that, many just 1 year. So maybe some direction around that. I think it's the website and having that posted and how long that stays up there. But certainly those are permanent records. Should anybody request that, they could certainly get that. And maybe people weren't aware of that as well. So.
Okay, so there's an amendment on the floor to remove the words "and continuing in perpetuity." Is there a seconder for that amendment? Trustee Higginson, any comments, questions, seeking clarification? Okay, all those in support of the amendment? Any opposed? That carries. So there was a request from the director around some direction. So we've removed "and continuing in perpetuity." Does someone, Trustee Higginson, want to bring forward a suggestion?
So the direction that you were looking for is how long to kind of keep these. Do we have like you were saying about 3 to 4 years? As a post, I can appreciate as a person who works in IT that keeping those on the website forever is a little bit much. So I'm happy to do 3 to 4 years.
Director Kelly?
That would be reasonable, I think. And if anybody did want something prior to that, certainly Melissa LeBeouf could assist.
Trustee Higginson?
Is it possible to indicate that as well? Kind of, if people are going to scroll all the way to the bottom looking for something, is it possible to put that in there, that there would be a place for them to contact in order, if they're looking for something that's in the archives, that they could send an email? That'd be great.
Okay, so the wording would be, so beginning with the October 15th meeting and maintain the...
And maintained on the board website up to 4 years.
Okay, seconder for that amendment? Trustee Cook, any comments, questions? Trustee Chin?
Oh, thank you. I think I would like to use at least 4 years instead of up to 4 years. If you write up to, it means from 0 to 4. So at least 3 or 4 years might be better.
Ms. LeBeouf?
Can I suggest current +3 or current +4?
So as in the current year plus 4?
Yes.
Sorry, the current year plus 3 or 4? Trustee Chin, would that work for your amendment? That,
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
I think that would address what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a seconder for that amendment? Okay, Trustee Burgess, so we have an amendment on the amendment. Okay, any comments or questions? All those in support of the amendment on the amendment? Okay. Can I have the new wording, please? And now we're on the, that is the amendment now. I think it makes the the first amendment redundant, and this is now the new wording. So I think we're caught up so far. Any further changes? Would anybody like the new motion read? Okay. Okay. Any further questions, comments? Seeing not, Trustee Burgess?
I just want to make sure, because I have on the board, and maintained on the board website for current plus 3 years. That's what I'm thinking, 4 total. That's my understanding, okay?
Yes. Okay, I will call the question. All those in support of the motion as amended? Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. Thank you. Okay, we are at reports to be received. We have already received M1, and we are now at M2. Was someone going to speak to the information coming forward from the audit committee?
Oh, I was going to do the report of the director. I was going to do some.
Oh, of course. My apologies. My apologies. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. We've been hitting the books now for about 6 weeks, which if anyone is keeping score, that's about 15% of our school year at this time. We've been doing lots of exploring so far, making use of all sorts of places and spaces. Everybody's hitting their stride in the classroom with our extracurricular activities, such as the elementary cross-country season, which is always a very popular event. Last month, we celebrated the idea that every child matters by observing Orange Shirt Day in many of our schools, honoring the survivors of residential schools. I had a wonderful opportunity to meet this amazing woman, Dorothy Groton, a 92-year-old veteran of World War II. We sponsored a flag in her honor that is flying in Dieppe Park. Last month, we announced our new partnership with the Windsor Residence for Young Men on the Youth Independence Program, which teaches life skills to young people who are at risk of becoming homeless. And the safety of our students is always a major concern, and it's great to see our students looking after each other, and our school bus patrols are receiving training this fall, as usual, to learn what to do if there's an emergency on the bus. Our partners at the Windsor Police Service, Windsor Fire and Rescue, the City Parking Enforcement Department staged a demonstration recently to show the challenges of traffic around schools in Windsor during drop-off and the end of the day. The primary message really here was that there are lots of ways our families can reduce congestion in school areas and make them safer for everyone, including our neighbors. Real estate broker Rick Rose stopped by one day with a remarkable donation. He brought hundreds of packages of school supplies for students, which were being distributed to those who might need them. And once again, our schools enthusiastically supported the Terry Fox Marathon of Hope with fun runs that raised money for cancer research. We've kicked off another year of our reciprocal learning program that brings student teachers from China to our communities and to our schools in cooperation with the University of Windsor Faculty of Education and Southwestern University in China. And I want to remind everyone about an event coming up soon, Take Your Kids to Work Day. This will be Wednesday, November 6th. It's a great chance for grade 9 students to go to work with a parent to learn about the work world and what it's really like. And parents are encouraged to register through the Parents tab that's on our website. And that concludes the Director's report. Lots of great things happening across the system. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the Director? Okay, thank you very much. We are now at M2, which is information coming forward from the Audit Committee of June 17th and September 23rd. Trustee Hatfield, would you like to speak to this?
I'd like to defer to the Superintendent of Business and perhaps the Vice Chair to speak for me, if they could, please.
Absolutely, no problem. Trustee Leclerc has his hand up and is offering to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you have before you a report from the Audit Committee from 2 previous meetings, one from June 17th and one from September 23rd. And it basically just highlights 4 reports that are included for audits through KPMG, one on literacy and basic skills program, the employment services program, the Youth Job Link program, and the Canada Ontario Jobs Grant program. Overall, everything is in good order. If you have any questions, I'll entertain them and do my best to answer them, but at this point, it's for information only.
Thank you, Trustee Leclerc. Any questions from trustees? Trustee Burgess?
I'm sorry, I should have asked this again beforehand, but it's on handwritten 55. The LBS Corrections Literacy Initiative amounting to 87,400. Is that what we used to do or have done at the Southwest Detention Center?
Superintendent,
I believe it is.
Superintendent Houston?
Thank you. So we did have two programs at the Southwest Detention Center. We had the regular day school credit program, and then we had the literacy basic skills. As you're aware, the ministry cut the funding for the day school program, but we still run the literacy basic skills program there.
Thank you. Any further questions from trustees? Okay, seeing none. We are now at M3, report of the OPSPA Director / Delegate. Trustee Burgess, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't belabor my report. There will be an electronic version so that the folks can just click on any links that I've embedded in it. This is a report mostly from the Board of Directors meeting that was held on the Friday, September 27th and Saturday, September 28th. A lot of this can be found also on the OPSPA website and the summary that is put out in the OPSPA Connects blog, which also gives us legislation update, etc. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure that was included was some of the comments that the Minister of Education, Stephen Leachy, shared with us. There weren't any questions asked at the meeting, but I wanted to bring to the board's notice that he did discuss things as those dots are there, beta testing new initiatives, that new initiatives wouldn't be rolled out without kind of testing them first. Seeking better alignment with curriculum and skills learned in school with what's needed in the marketplace, and understanding what labor market needs. He cited, I think, the conference board, and noting youth unemployment numbers. So that was a shift. I hadn't heard that from the previous minister or necessarily previous ministers to that. So there was a definite shift in aligning job and learning. Professional development monies for educators to best deliver the math curriculum with the next year's September reboot. He mentioned that there was a portion in the grade 10 financial literacy requirement. I believe it's not this year though, but it will be coming up, and it will enable students to design a budget for their year after high school. That's first I had heard of that as well, defined in that way. Financial literacy, yes, but with that project, we hadn't heard that before. Updates, of course, on the health and physical education curriculum to ensure that kids feel safe and welcomed. They understand their own and others' mental health and wellness, concussion safety, concerns around vaping, and cognitive effects of cannabis consumption. He did say that there were capital finance updates, and there were applications for proposal, and that they were flowing to district school boards. It was very good to hear that the monies did flow to us for land acquisition for the Kingsville School. This is big news. We've been waiting a long time, but sure enough, things come to those who wait, I suppose. He did speak to Indigenous education and their challenges, but I wanted to highlight one thing because I do have a recommendation, and I didn't include it in writing, but I will be sharing it as a motion with this report. He did talk about some of the challenges that we're having. Within OPSPA, we have a standalone and embedded Indigenous Trustees Council. And the ITC meets at every opportunity they can when we all meet, so that would be at the AGM and at PES. Everyone is welcome. at the Indigenous Trustee Councils when they meet, and they do meet on their own, and we do have Indigenous representation on our two standing working teams, which is Policy Development and Education Program. But over the summer, you will remember back to July 2018, when the new government came in, there was a pause put on a lot of different things, one of which was the Indigenous education the work on the curriculum that had been going on for the full vetting cycle, almost 2 years, and it was in the last part of it where elders and specialists were convening in July, and all travel was canceled, et cetera, and the curriculum update kind of came to a halt. And there hasn't been any action. And the Indigenous Trustee Council member who's at the Board of Directors, Chief Elaine Johnson, spoke to this particular frustration because the minister hadn't met face-to-face at that point. So he did talk about some of those challenges, but arising from that, I will have a motion going forward because it was expressed at the board table. He also spoke about e-learning and the need for flexibility in its mandatory nature. Again, first time we had heard about allowing some flexibility because it sounded like mandate was mandate. He did couch it in terms, however, of supervised alternative learning, particularly, and maybe cognitive strengths of students that would require some flexibility, so not necessarily for all. But he did state that there was some time before its introduction and thought there would be some latitude. So again, first little change that we had heard. There was a governance review of school boards that the province is thinking about. This is, you have to really think about this. How can we improve the efficacy of school boards? So at one time saying, yes, we absolutely value you as an entity, but we are creatures of the province, and they are looking to improve the efficacy of school boards. Patrick Chase, who was with the, equity, what was the whole division? Oh, pardon me?
Equity, the directors?
Yeah. Well, it had a mandate of, I think, 2 years or, right, and the time was kind of up, so we didn't know whether or not they would still have the government would still have an integral part that, looked at equity. But yes, this minister said that he was in constant contact with and valued that partnership and looked to Mr. Chase for being a lead on this, and particularly consulted him moving forward, it says here, on mitigating conditions for better equity, particularly for racialized and marginalized students. But it's actually for everyone, obviously, but that's going to be a focus. That's good news, very good news. The profile of students is changing. The minister mentioned regarding their mental health, that kids do have a burden that is kind of unprecedented from previous generations. He wanted to recognize that, and that we, school boards and the ministry, both serve the same constituents, and that we need to look at that bigger picture of how youth mental health has an impact on learning. So I bring that to your attention. I'll let you read through all the rest of it. Please do. Please do connect with OPSPA Connects on the website, because it is an ongoing place where you can find any memos, any legislation updates once we get back to reconvening in the legislature. There is a regional meeting I want to bring to your attention coming up on November 2nd. Trustee Sipcar will be attending that. It will be in London. There's a Friday night component of it in St. Thomas. All trustees are welcome. So we look forward to hearing what happened there. They'll, I believe, have some professional development as well. But getting back to the Indigenous education recommendation that I have here, what we brought forward to notice, because Chief Elaine Johnston did bring forward, in her very calm way, but she expressed that there was a lot of disappointment and anger underneath that calm exterior. about how the calls to action, particularly number 62, was just stagnated. And I'm going to read it out loud. This is from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's final report, and I'm just going to read 62I. So, we call upon the federal, provincial, and territorial governments in consultation and collaboration with survivors, that's residential school survivors, Aboriginal peoples, and educators to make age-appropriate curriculum on residential schools, treaties, and Aboriginal peoples' historical and contemporary contributions to Canada a mandatory education requirement for kindergarten to grade 12 students. The key part of that is mandatory. This was finished in 2015. We were working on it provincially. We were this close, and then it was paused, and nothing has happened. And what we are hearing is that, well, mandatory, I don't know, do we want to go there? Well, we'll just leave it up to you if you want to do it. And we as a board, when the TRC calls to action came out, endorsed the calls to action through the IEAC. We endorsed the calls to action. Canadian School Board and other organizations that we belong to endorsed the calls to action that as they related to education. So we've already endorsed this. What we want is some action. So with my report, the motion I'd like to put on the table, Madam Chair, is that the Greater Essex County District School Board send a letter of support regarding the expectation that the call to action number 62, with particular emphasis on 62I, of the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, be implemented without any further delay. This letter should be sent directly to the Minister of Education and the Indigenous Trustee Council, copying the OPSPA Board of Directors, the OPSPA Education Program Work Team, and education critics of all provincial parties. So I put that on the floor, and I look for someone to support it and for us to endorse it.
Okay, I find the motion in order. It doesn't have to be a notice of motion because it stems directly from the report. Is there a seconder for that letter? Trustee Olmsted. Any comments, questions? Does anyone need it read again? Please, Trustee Burgess. That the Greater Essex County District School Board send a letter of support regarding the expectation that the call to action number 62, with particular emphasis on the urgency of 62I, of the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission be implemented without any further delay. This letter should be sent directly to the Minister of Education and the Indigenous Trustee Council, copying OPSPA Board of Directors, the OPSPA Education Program Work Team, and education critics of all provincial parties. Okay, any questions, comments from trustees? Okay, seeing none, all those in support of the letter? Any opposed? Okay, one opposed, and that carries. Thank you. Anything further on your report, either from yourself or Trustee Sipkar as the delegate? Okay, thank you. Okay, we are now at the chair's report. I just want to say that I'm looking forward to kicking off our new committees with trustee representation, as well as the school tours of the breakfast program. So I thank you. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for me? Okay, seeing none, we are now at trustee question period. Remember, our bylaws indicate one question and two supplemental. Does anyone have any questions for administration tonight? Trustee Burgess.
I wonder if you could elaborate on what an announcement from the Capital Finance branch to acquire land, what that actually means.
Director Kelly?
I'm not exactly sure your question, but we did receive a letter from the Ministry of Education indicating that we had the funds to purchase land. So So do you want me to?
So that means there's a confirmation of funds to purchase land. So the next step would be to look for land and purchase land.
That would be correct, and we hope to do that shortly.
Thank you. Any further questions for administration from trustees? Trustee Chin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question regarding how to make the notice of motion, and for how long can we make a motion that previously been made, being denied, and is there any procedure for how long I should wait for?
So I think your question is with regard to if a trustee has.
Yeah, like the bully. I remember the bully issue. I made a motion, and it was declined, and I would like to make another one about bully, but I don't know how long I should wait to make that.
Okay, so I think Trustee Burgess is looking that up. I want to say it's either 6 months or 1 year. It's 1 year, but Trustee Chin, that depends on what that motion is. So it could still be on bullying, but if it's different, then right?
Okay.
If
Different. I
yeah,
may
like
change,
if the intent is different from the first motion.
Oh, okay.
Okay, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that 6 months or?
It's a year.
Yeah,
It's a year.
But I can change and make motion, right?
Yes, if it's a change, but
Okay.
still related to bullying, that's
Yeah.
allowed. It
Okay.
does have to be a fairly substantial change.
Okay.
But yep, that's
Okay.
allowed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any further, Trustee Halberstadt?
This is a question for you, Madam Chair, actually. Earlier tonight, you talked about trustees visiting schools, and I think you said you only got one response, and that was from you.
No, I only had one specific. Yes, I actually did mean to elaborate on that. So I did have several responses from trustees. The only one that that was specific, like about a program, was mine. However, there was from you a request to visit schools in your area. Trustees can make that request of the superintendent anytime. Does that clarify? So you can still go visit your
Yeah,
schools.
I know, but
unless you're saying that you want all trustees to go on.
no. Generally, if you visit a school, I think superintendents do accompany the trustees, so I guess have to work that out as far as a schedule.
I think if you talk to the superintendent about going to visit, then you could work that out with the superintendent. Really, the point behind that is to let the principal know that that a trustee is coming to visit. Did you have something to add, Director Kelly? Okay, thank you. Any further questions in trustee question period for administration? Okay, seeing none, we are now at notices of motion. Any notices of motion tonight? Trustee Chin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a notice of motion, and I recommend that the GECDSB amend its procedural bylaw to record in the minutes the identification of those trustees who cast dissenting votes on motions passed by the majority, and that an individual trustee be allowed to request that the minutes reflect a brief summary or clarification of the trustee's opinion voiced at the preceding meeting. Okay.
And you can provide that to Ms. LeBoeuf in writing? Can you please provide that to Ms. LeBoeuf in writing?
Yes,
Okay,
I
thank
can.
you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further notices of motion from trustees? Okay, seeing none, we are now at announcements. Any announcements from trustees? Trustee Olmsted.
Thank you. On Friday, Trustee Burgess and myself attended a garden party at LDSS to commemorate the Caldwell Peace Garden opening. Members of the Caldwell First Nation, Friends of Point Pelee, the LDSS Eco Team, and members of the community were present for a very moving ceremony. It was a beautiful morning, and then after we were treated to lunch that was prepared by the LDSS hospitality group, and it was delicious. So just wanted to let everyone know we have a garden now at LDSS, which is a perfect place for contemplation, peaceful meditation, outdoor classroom. It is really a beautiful place. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further announcements from trustees? Trustee Leclerc, no. Any further announcements from trustees? Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Great meeting tonight.